Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am not done yet talking about Arizona versus John Elliott, and I'm here today with Tim. And today on John's Briefs, I had a pretrial interview with the prosecutor on this case, very common.
Yes.
And he tried to pin me down on a particular way of looking at this case that I want to run by my attorney friend because to me it sounded like one of the dumbest things I'd ever heard in my life.
I love these ambush questions. I always look like a stuttering moron, so hit it, baby.
To win the fight after the fight, you need help. After a use of force, I trust Firearms Legal Protection to help me win the fight for the rest of my life. From their 24/7 attorney-answered hotline to coverage for the use of all legal tools, Firearms Legal Protection has you covered. Get a discount by signing up at the link below.
No, you don't. You look great when we do these. You look like $1 million. So no kidding. Okay, so it's very common. The way that this often works, normally works, is I write a report, right? So I look at overall discovery. I talk to my side's attorney several times. What else you got for me? Because I always say, give me all of discovery. And they go, I have. And then I go, no, I need this, 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 and this. Yeah, I've got that too.
You don't get ambushed at court and you know, when you get asked a question on cross-examination, well, did you review the autopsy report? Well, no, I didn't review it. And they look at the jury like, well, what's this guy even giving?
What kind of expert is this?
So you have to read through everything, even if it's ridiculously irrelevant and boring, you have to read it. Yeah.
So, look over all the discovery, end up, okay, I'll call with the attorneys. I think this is my understanding of what happened here. I believe that it's justified. Do you want to hire me? Yes, we want to hire you. Cool. You already retained me for this part, but now I'm going to write a report. Okay, so I write a report up. My reports, I love writing research papers, so that's what I was professionally trained to do. In the case of John Elliott, that ended up being around 25 pages or so. And so submitted that goes to court and it also goes to the prosecutor, right? So then the prosecutor goes, well, I want a pretrial interview. I'd like to talk to him about this report because I want to poke as many holes in it before trial as I can because he's also going to file a Daubert challenge. You can go on the channel and look at my thing about Daubert challenges. And I'm going to try to keep you out of court. I'm going to try to minimize what you can testify about. So he does that in this case, and his investigator asked me several questions. He was incredulous, his investigator was, that I had not talked to Mr. Elliott before this, to which that one was pretty easy. I said I didn't need to. He was on the record. He gave a statement post-Miranda, and so you have an official statement from the defendant as to why he did what he did. I don't need to talk to him further about that. I already have that. And so then this is the one I want to ask you about.
Okay.
The prosecutor says, okay, so if you look at my report, there's other videos on the channel that I have it actually linked. I'll link it in the description too. So it starts with a section on who I am, and then here's the evidence that I looked over. Then here are the issues and principles that we use to look at the facts. Then we look at the facts through the principles and the standards. And then what are our conclusions? And part of that on near the bottom is I talked about, okay, so what is the justification for a reasonable person to use to protect himself against an animal attack? Okay, because that's part of the animal abuse statute is if you use deadly force to stop an animal attack against a person, then you have immunity from this crime.
That's justification for that crime.
It's a justification. And then we talk about, the Arizona Revised Statutes in Chapter 4, of justification. And the prosecutor says, Mr. Correa, are you aware that in Arizona, the statutes involving justification only involve justification of use of force by humans?
That's wrong. I mean, I'll just be very succinct about it. That's wrong. Clearly that's wrong.
So he was like, no, it says you can only use deadly force against humans.
It doesn't say that.
And I was like,
it says if there's basically a risk of imminent death or grave bodily injury, you can use lethal force to stop that threat. It could be from a sailboat mast is falling towards you and you can shoot the pulley and make it swing away from hitting you in the head. That's an appropriate use of dischargeable weapon because it was justified to save your life.
That'd be some John Wick stuff.
I know that's ridiculous. I don't know why I came up with that. But the point being is that's just hogwash. I mean, so I guess if a grizzly bear is going to attack you, you just have to let it eat you. Right?
That's it. I literally said those words.
Did you really?
I was like, so I'm sorry, sir. Like, are you saying that if I'm in the woods and a grizzly bear is running me down, that I go, well, sucks to be me.
I guess I have to be a law-abiding meal at this point. Yeah, no, I don't know where he came up with that. Maybe he just thought he'd bully you into agreeing or something.
I was like, I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry, what? Because it talks about a deadly threat, not a deadly person.
Right, exactly.
And he was like, well, no, I mean, we have case law that it only applies to force by humans. And I was like, I'd love to see it. Can you quote that for me
And
so
by the
that I
way,
can look it up?
I've gone through pretrial interviews before. Prosecutors have misstated the law and they try to bully everybody in the room into agreeing with them. No, I'm not going to get bullied on that. So, it's just, no.
So I was like, I mean, what?
Yeah.
What? Really? No.
And then probably what should happen is that the defense counsel will probably file some form of motion in limine to get that issue cleared up before we get to trial.
Yeah.
You don't have an argument like that in front of the jury. But yeah, that kind of makes me confident that the prosecutor is either inept or dishonest, either one of which is going to help you. So, but that's not, and I'm not saying that prosecutor is inept or dishonest, but that's a misstatement of the law. Whether it was innocent or not, I guess we'll never know. But
Well, it at least tells me. Now, listen, I always say, now, Tim is, of course, a highly experienced attorney in use of force in self-defense and in firearms. This is a rarity. I want you guys to recognize this. This guy is one of the top 0.1% of attorneys in this arena in the nation.
well, I don't know if I go that far, but thank you.
I would go that far. I talk to a lot of attorneys. I get hired by plenty of attorneys. See, this guy doesn't need to ever hire experts because he is one. He's a court-admitted expert in use of force and firearms, too. Yeah?
Yeah, I am.
So being both
The problem
of those,
is you can't be both at the same time. I have to keep reminding myself of that sometimes. But
well, you can be both, but you can't act as both in court.
declare to be both.
Yes, you cannot act as both in court.
Yeah.
So he's this guy, but I get to talk to attorneys all day, not all day, but all the time who aren't. And things like when I say, here are the elements of a self-defense claim, and the attorney goes, wow, I've never heard that put that way before.
Wow.
And you go, okay, cool. Well, take that education to heart. Maybe here's a couple books that can help you. And this prosecutor is just, I think, throwing out legal theories, trying to figure out a way to get this guy convicted.
Or again, just, small town prosecutor, small county prosecutor just thinks he can bully people into agreeing and, maybe he can get away with it. I don't know.
And you see this kind of stuff in other arenas happen?
I've had it happen once in recent memory. Within the last few months, I had it happen where there was a misstatement of the law and the prosecutor tried to bully everybody in the pre-trial interviews and was like, okay, well, I guess we'll get that resolved before the trial starts. And it went away because I think he went back and realized that, in fact, in this particular case, one of the other attorneys had their laptop out and they pulled it up and slid their laptop around to him and showed him he was wrong. And he just didn't correct himself and just moved on. Oh. So it never came up later. But it was like, dude, you're not going to bully people like that. So it's not.
Yeah. Well, and so then I knew in trial that he was going to try to bully me, right? I knew he was going to try to. And so that was his job and that was his way. He was going to be that guy. And here's the fun part is then when we got to trial, and again, my testimony is in the Aspen Limited app. So if you're in the app, watch that testimony. If you're not, join us there. There was a couple times in there that the judge really wanted me to answer yes or no to a question. And I literally looked at the prosecutor in cross and he was like, well, yes or no, Mr. Correa. I said, I'm very sorry to speak like a lawyer, but it depends.
You are very sorry to ever have to speak like a lawyer.
Yes, I apologize from the depths of my soul.
Way, I'll tell you a quick story. This is years ago. I was a victim of an assault and I was on the stand and this would have been the defense attorney in that case, was trying to pick me apart on cross-examination and they said the same thing. Mr. Forsey, please answer yes or no. And so I said, yes or no. And they were getting really frustrated. And the judge started snickering. And answer yes or no. And I said, yes or no. I matched their tone each time. They told me how to answer, so that's what I said, yes or no. And then after about the third time, the judge kind of put a stop to it. And,
Move on.
Funny. It was like, look, you need to ask your question in a more artful form. I'm sorry. So,
Yeah. And so just understand, one of the things that your lawyer is doing behind the scenes, one of the things that when I'm an expert, the other side, you would hope that a prosecutor, their primary mission is to seek justice.
Justice, right?
That's their mission, right?
It's supposed to be. It's not vengeance. It's not retribution.
Yeah, they're human beings, though, and they have egos, and they want to win. And you don't become an attorney because you don't have an ego, and you don't have drive, and you don't have a desire to be competitive, okay? You're not going to make it through law school if you don't have those things. You go be a librarian if you don't have those things. Not that we don't need great librarians. I'm not making fun of librarians. But you're going to be competitive and high drive if you're going to be an attorney. And they want to win. And they try to find anything they can. A lot of times I've seen plenty of prosecutors that they want to win. And so how can I win? Well, if I can keep this expert out, so I send out a Daubert challenge, and if I can get him away, that Daubert is pretty low standard. You're not going to keep me out in a use of force case, friend. Right. I don't worry about Daubert challenges anymore. I go, oh, rookie, come on.
They're throwing spaghetti against the fridge on the chance it might stick.
I know you're going to file it, but come on, save us all the time.
Right.
And then in pretrial interview, he's going to sometimes ask stupid questions like that to see if he can rattle me, to see if he can get me to go, it is? I guess so. Gosh, I guess got to rethink my whole life. And thankfully, because I was able to go, no, the principles are identical. It's about the threat, not about where the threat comes from and the species that presents the threat. Right. Then he tried to then before the judge, part of his Daubert challenge was, I've never testified in an attack against an animal attack. So every case.
And if you have, it wasn't a chocolate lab. Well, it wasn't a chocolate lab. It wasn't a bitch. It was a male.
Right.
I mean,
that's it.
It's stupid. Yeah, they're just swinging.
Well, Mr. Correa, every trial you've testified in has been the person using force has been a human. Is that correct? Yes, to date, every single trial has been a human. I agree.
Except for this one. Yeah.
Yeah. This will be the first when it's a dog. Well, I mean, then you don't have any experience with that. Principles are the same, counselor. There's no difference in the principles.
Except the threat's closer because they're way faster.
Right, except for they're way faster. The principles of human performance and the principles involved in use of force don't change based on species, sir. Right. And so the judge saw through that. The Daubert challenge was defeated. We were able to testify. Wanted you to see the fact. Attorney talks about this, man. Prosecutors should be agents of justice. I think most normally are.
I mean, I've met many who are, and they're darn good people, and they understand their job really well. Usually they have a little bit of gray hair, and yeah, John's right. I mean, I've never met an attorney that has no ego. I mean, I think everybody has ego, but yeah, attorneys, he's right. They're driven. They're a lot of ex-jocks, a lot of that whole concept of win. I get that, but you know what? You got to temper that with judgment and good common sense. Your job is not to throw innocent people in prison. That doesn't help. That's the system isn't built on that. And really, we've talked about this before. The real big problem with our prosecutorial system is the lack of prosecutorial discretion. Mm-hmm. Why was that case filed? Okay, it shouldn't have been filed. And if it wasn't filed, there wouldn't have been this drive to win the case and do your job. You'd be on a different case where that would have been appropriate, right? That's the big thing, is that there's so many of these cases that are overcharged or that shouldn't be charged at all. And it's a waste of tax dollars, and it forces people into bankruptcy, and it ruins lives, it ruins reputation, it ruins marriages, jobs, relationships with children. It shouldn't have been charged. It's bad enough this guy had to kill a dog. You think he felt good about that? Now you're going to make him pay $100,000 and risk going to prison for a couple of years. How is that just? I mean, if it was reasonable that he would have thought he was about to get hurt or killed by this dog, there should have been no charges filed. And clearly, you could disagree with that and also be reasonable. But I think that his belief and his actions thereupon were clearly reasonable, and it shouldn't be charged.
This is hearsay, mind you. This is hearsay. But from the defense attorney, I heard from the defense attorney that he didn't offer Mr. Elliott a plea that didn't involve prison time and a felony because he said he had too much community pressure.
Which is no plea.
Right, which is no plea.
That's no plea.
Yeah, no plea. Because he said there was community pressure. The community pressure, there was a couple, like 2 news stories, and there was cops because it was owned by a cop.
Pressure was the dog was owned by a cop.
Was owned by a cop.
That's the story right there.
There's the one. So I hate everything about this. This is the way these things go. And again, I will say this is why you want to stay out of use of force if you can, because while this prosecutor is asking me dumb questions, I am billing Mr. Elliott $550 an hour. Yep. And the attorney is billing him. I don't know how many dollars an hour that the attorney is billing him. Hopefully a good rate, because he's got to pay his bills too. Yeah. And Mr. Elliott, who is retired at 75 years old, is watching his retirement accounts dwindle. I hate that, but and I know somebody's going to argue with me and go, well, John, you shouldn't charge money to do these things. The problem is I had to take time out of my day. That's I got to take time away from my regular stuff of making this and making the main channel videos and running the company. Mortgage. And my employees, I got 10 employees, and guess what? They all got to eat. And if there's not enough money in the company coffers at the end of the month, guess what? I don't get paid.
It's the reality. And sometimes it's fun because and I've asked this question of witnesses, and I've had it asked of me as an expert witness, well, you're being paid to be here today for your testimony, aren't you?
Oh, yeah.
And the best response I ever have is, I believe every single person in this room, except for the defendant and the jurors, are getting paid. I think the jurors are actually getting paid $23 a day.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm getting paid just like you are. We're all here doing a job. I mean, did you think it was otherwise?
It's a dumb question. Mr. Correa, were you paid for your services? Yes. Yeah, sure was. Yeah, sure. And then, it's asking, well, were you paid to be here today? Yes. Uh-huh. And what were you paid to be here? It's in my report, counselor. Paid $5,000 to be here today. Oh, that's interesting. Just kind of leave that there. And then on redirect, thankfully, the defense attorney, Ms. Correa, is there anything odd or abnormal about you being paid for your work? No, not to the best of my knowledge. I'm pretty sure you're being paid and he's being paid and everybody here is being paid, other than the defendant and the jury. You know, everybody's getting paid to be here. So yeah. And then, and the other thing he wanted to ask a whole bunch of, Mr. Cree, have you ever been a law enforcement officer? No, never been a cop. Mm-mm. And in his mind, he's trying to get the jury to not listen to my testimony because a cop is the expert.
Right.
And I'm like,
and unfortunately, a lot of people buy into that. Too many.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Thankfully, the jury didn't in this case. But they'll ask those kind of dumb questions. Just thought you guys might want some inside baseball on how these things go. And again, this whole case from Mr. Elliott pisses me off. And so I'm going to make some folks famous, even if it means I'm never allowed in Payson again. Tim, appreciate the knowledge, man.
Always, buddy. I didn't add much. Thank you.